All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast. It has been a minute. We bet a lot of you have been enjoying the RTI Diamond Pass, kind of our new iteration of the baseball season. That's with Ryan and Jack, but it's been a minute since the Press Pass was in action, but it is now for a momentous time of the year. You know, I think with a lot of the March Madness stuff happening, you hear a lot of talking heads obviously breaking down the bracket, breaking down what's going to happen. We have our own expert, and that is Ryan Shumpert, as always. My name is Rick Butler. Ryan, good afternoon, my man. It is a Tuesday before tournament time. How are you feeling? How are you doing? We're coming off the SEC tournament over in Nashville. Have you fully recovered yet before we start the next leg of the journey that is March postseason basketball?
Well, I mean, you're putting a lot of pressure on me first by calling me a talking head, which I guess, quite literally I am a talking head. I mean, to borrow a phrase from most basketball coaches this time of year, nobody's 100%. So I'm not 100%, but I'm doing
well. I say that because, and this kind of hit me earlier. I was like everybody is right now, right? You're searching YouTube, you're seeing what people are saying. There's so much fun content to go around. Which, by the way, the addition of sort of Instagram or TikTok scrolling when college basketball hits that algorithm, you're done. I mean, there is just endless content for days there. But one of the things I think about is that obviously everybody on any network has an opinion about all 68 teams, which is not an easy thing to do. So I'm always fascinated with what they have to say about Tennessee, knowing on the flip side, I'm about to talk to you, or I pretty much talk to every day, somebody who's probably seen more Tennessee basketball than anybody that's not actually associated with the team. So it's nice to hear the national perspective, but then it's always nice to come back on the local level, see what the people who are around the team are thinking. As we're at this point in the season, Tennessee entering the NCAA tournament coming up on Thursday. They're going to a familiar place. They're going to Rupp Arena in Lexington. I'm sure there'll be plenty of Tennessee fans who can get off work the end of the week, make their way just the quick drive up to Lexington. But Ryan, I want to kind of go backwards before we go forwards and talk about the SEC tournament, because it was noteworthy in a positive way for Tennessee. The Volunteers come up as the runner-up in the tournament, take a loss to Florida in the final game. But I think that was really impressive showing from Tennessee. What they were able to do in that 3-game stretch made me feel really good about where this team is at heading into this tournament. You kind of blitzed Texas in that first game. That was a team who was playing their third game in 3 days. So you maybe felt like that was going to happen. They had an emotional win the day before, but then you're taking on back-to-back number one seeds in back-to-back days. You beat Auburn, who was the consensus. I believe maybe Duke was number one in the country, but
yeah,
they've been the top dogs for the last large handful of weeks. And then you have a competitive game against Florida. And so I think I at least leave that tournament. I think you do as well, but I leave that tournament very impressed from what I saw from Tennessee. And I feel good about what their team shape looks like as we head into Lexington here in a couple of days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to your point, I think Tennessee played well in Nashville. Really all 3 games. I mean, they lost in the championship game. They weren't great defensively, but really the only area I would say they were bad in that game was just the rebounding. That's probably where they truly lost. But I didn't even leave that game feeling all that worse about Tennessee, or didn't feel like they played a bad game necessarily. So I think it's hard not to like where Tennessee's at. I think Tennessee's played. They've played 9 games since they left Rupp Arena the last time with a loss, and I think in those 9 games, I mean, they're 7-2, and I think they've played well in that stretch. And to me, it's hard not to feel good about where the Vols are at entering the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and just like you mentioned a second ago, when you're talking about analysts, no team is going to be perfect either. Certainly Tennessee is a 2 seed in this scenario heading into the tournament as well, but I like where they're at. And I like the guard play from Tennessee a lot right now. You see Zakai Ziegler maybe taking on that, to use a baseball phrase, that October mindset. He's doing it for March. Chasnier gave you some big showings there in Nashville. And then Jordan Gainey, who I think it was Rod Clark who said this, Ryan. I don't know if it was maybe today or Sunday after one of the games, maybe when it was, but and maybe I just read it as a quote on social media that somebody made up. But the idea that Jordan Gainey did not win that 6th man of the year, having a little bit of a chip on his shoulder as he moves into the postseason. I think you saw that with what he was able to do in the tournament, especially the championship game. He lands on the SEC all-tournament team. But maybe him playing with a chip on his shoulder, him rising to the occasion of what March is going to bring, I think that could be an X factor. But that's certainly a big takeaway I had from what was going on in Nashville earlier in the weekend.
Definitely so. And yeah, Rod said, talked about it today. And I don't know if he necessarily said as much chip on his shoulder, but just that, he's one of the best 6 men in the country. And he's a guy. And I think Grant Ramey asked this question, and Grant said this sometime this weekend, where like Jordan Gainey is the best player that nobody out of Knoxville knows who he is, and the way he's played the last 2 months of the season. And I was going back and running some numbers today, and since that loss at Kentucky, so 9 games, he's averaging 13.5 points in that stretch, and he's shooting just 27% from 3-point range, which is again, it's I think that was a development this weekend for Tennessee, that Tennessee against Auburn, Tennessee against Texas did not shoot the ball very well from 3, and they had good offensive performances. It was the same thing that happened against South Carolina to close the regular season. And that's just something that really hasn't been the case much for Tennessee this season. So I think that's positive. I think Rod Clark called that kind of inspiring as they enter the postseason. And Jordan Gainey's kind of the poster child for that he has been really effective scoring the basketball, and he's done it when he has not shot very well from 3-point range in that stretch. Not that, he's had some good 3-point shooting games. He had 2 big shots at A&M. I think he made 4 threes at Ole Miss, so it hasn't like he's just been terrible the entire time. But his ability to get to the basket, his ability to get to the free throw line, certainly his ability to work in the mid-range where he's been really, really effective. It's big for Tennessee, and it gives them that punch that they maybe haven't had for a lot of the season. And I think I maybe said this on one of our post games, maybe the Alabama post game I said with Caleb. I don't know. I said at some point, but it's just been super cool to watch, because I would have never thought that after watching him last year, that I thought he could do what he's done this year, but I thought it would look like him shooting 38% from 3 and doing it. I definitely didn't think it would look like him shooting 29% from 3 and him still scoring at this rate. So his development, his growth, his comfort level, which is just clearly night and day from last season, and it was starting to change. I think towards the end of last season, he played well in the tournament. Has been super cool to watch, and I think that development has given Tennessee an extra offensive punch in the way he does it that's different than how Tennessee's offense has looked a lot of the season when it's clicking.
Yeah, I think with a lot of modern basketball, whenever you see guys taking a lot of mid-range pull-up jumpers, you sort of cringe a little bit, just because that's sort of a fleeting part of some aspects of basketball, obviously not all of them. But what Jordan Gainey and then Chaz Lanier has also been able to do in that mid-range, I think just gives Tennessee an extra added bit of versatility when those two guys have the ball. And you've seen Tennessee have a bit more of offensive efficiency, at least when that is happening. I'll give you credit a little bit, though. I mean, one of your bold predictions heading into the year, I think we talked about this over the weekend, was that Jordan Gainey would be averaging, I think, 13 points a game, and he's just a tick under. But that was a pretty bold prediction. So
Yeah.
you pat yourself on the back a little bit. I mean, what you thought could happen has sort of come to fruition over the last, or really over the course of the season. So he has been a tremendous sight to see for this Tennessee offense, who has really benefited from his success.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a weird dichotomy, because he's like at 11.7, so he's a decent bit off from 13.
All right, that's a bit more than I thought.
But generally speaking, like, he's been a lot better. He has taken a big step forward, which is what I thought he would do. And 13.
Do you know what it is in SEC play? I know he had some big ones in early non-conference play, but
I think it was in the 18 SEC games, maybe around 10.
Okay.
And obviously he had big games this weekend. I do have a little bit of breaking news that isn't.
Oh, wow.
We'll just be like gloss over it for the most part.
Okay.
But
all right,
from the good folks at Power Mizzou, just a 24/7 site of Missouri basketball, or of Missouri. Multiple sources tell us that Mizzou is hiring former Missouri State and Tennessee head coach Kelly Harper to replace Robin. I have no idea how to pronounce her last name. Pinchton.
Okay.
So Kelly Harper.
Wow.
Not really on the topic of this conversation, but some Tennessee news. Kelly Harper lands in another SEC school.
When you said it was something we were going to be able to just kind of say and move through, I was like, there's a lot of basketball. We're not going to really be able to stop that. That makes sense. All right. So from the analyst desk back to the whiteboard for Kelly Harper.
Yeah, and I think she had interviewed at Auburn too, so she was up there for a handful of jobs in the SEC. So will be interesting to see how she does there. Obviously, she was at Missouri State before she came to Tennessee.
That is okay. Good breaking news right there. What were we mentioning before that?
We
That's
were
how
we
quick
were
my
had kind of
attention
wrapped
span
up
is.
Jordan. Yeah, we'd wrapped up Jordan
Okay,
game
that's
talk.
right.
I think we'd kind of hit on everything there.
Okay.
I think we're
So
good to jump into the bracket stuff.
the brackets, the brackets, the brackets, the brackets. That is all anybody is talking about right now. That is all anybody is doing. Where are you at with the amount of brackets that you've done? I feel like you're just sort of in the mid range. You're not a one bracket guy, but you're not a 10 bracket guy. Maybe 3 to 4. Where are you with things right now?
I did one bracket in probably all of 3 minutes yesterday. I will do
Do you
so.
feel
No,
okay?
I
Go
don't.
ahead.
I
Okay,
just
that's what
completely
I was
I
like.
completely vibes it.
I was like, wow, he's gonna really just gonna shoot a shot.
What I typically do is so I have one, and I don't even know it's the runyourpool.com, I think is what it is. Where I do is what a money bracket that I'm in. That will be my legit one, and then
Okay.
obviously you get invited to tons of these ESPN ones. So
Oh,
I end up doing an ESPN one too. That's like a little bit different, and I'll join. So it ends up being two brackets that are relatively similar. Um, Usually I just can't remember what I put for both of them, especially the time to dive in the bracket has really decreased since working this job and
yes.
focusing on Tennessee a lot more. So
Yeah.
I will probably sit down. I don't know, maybe later tonight. Heck, it might be tomorrow night as we're watching. When we're in Lexington watching the first 4 game tomorrow night, that might be when I truly sit down and do my bracket that is the one I'm putting a little bit of money on.
Well, that's also a little bit into of a look into my plan. I am a bit of a procrastinator when it comes to my bracket. I like to just absorb as much as possible before doing anything. Um, I have absolutely planned on just being in that hotel room, or maybe we go to a restaurant or something on Wednesday night in Lexington, and just kind of looking over at your answer sheet, seeing what you got going on over there. No, but I am gonna wait till the end and just kind of. I don't want to give myself too much time to second guess myself. That's just going to
Yeah.
frustrate me throughout the week. So I do like to wait till the end. But we don't have to wait too long for Tennessee's first game of the tournament. They will be on the Saturday slate of things. They're going to be tipping off at 6:50 p.m. Eastern time, once again in Rupp Arena. 2 seed in the Midwest region taking on 15 seed Wofford. Ryan, you have a write-up right now on RockyTopInsider.com. It is a quick sort of a look into, sort of a preview, a scout into what the Wofford Terriers bring to the table. But it is not necessarily reminiscent of that 2019 team, I think it was, that did pull an upset in the first round. Tell me a little bit about what the Terriers are going to bring to the table when Tennessee sees them on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember what the point spread was in that game in 2019, but they were they were 7 seeds. So in that, from a seeding standpoint, it was not an
So
upset.
they're twice as far back.
Yeah, so they're more
Okay.
than double back, and I mean I don't know. There's obviously good and bad when you look at it from Tennessee's perspective. It's the first time a SoCon's team has been lower than a 13 seed since 2014 when Wofford was a 15 seed. So typically this is a conference that has a little bit higher seeds. It is a conference that teams have given higher seeds a good bit of fits in the last decade. Sanford almost beat Kansas last year. Furman beat Virginia 2 years ago. We were at that game in Orlando.
We were.
I remember distinctly as I was deathly sick in our hotel room in Indianapolis 2 years ago when UTC led Illinois for about the entirety of that game, and Illinois found a way to win like 54-53 late. So the conference has given teams fits or given higher seeds fits. This Wofford team, they were a 6 seed in the regular season. They made it to the championship game by they beat the 3 seed in ETSU, but then they beat like the 7 seed in VMI, who upset someone, and like a 4 seed in Furman, who upset UTC, who was
What were they? What were they seeded? You might have just said that a second ago. I'm sorry.
6.
Okay.
Yeah, so they didn't beat either of the top 2 teams. They, you can kind of see. I said all that to say you can see why they are a lower seed compared to what the SoCon typically is. It's a team that has, they played in Knoxville last year. It was the game after Tennessee beat Wisconsin, so the third game of the season. Tennessee won by 21 points, but led by just 5 at halftime. Their best player is the same guy, Corey Tripp. They have a center, Kyler Fowlwich, that's a versatile player, I guess is what I would say. He does a lot of things for them. He's just 6'9". He's the tallest guy in the rotation. So I think that's probably all the positives. Tennessee's seen them. There's not anybody. They got they got one guy that they played against last year who's a good player, another guy who's a solid player, but you wonder about how his game will translate as a big man against a little bit more length and athleticism. I think that's probably all the good stuff. Not a very good defensive team analytically. I think that's all good stuff. Bad stuff. A team that plays a really slow pace like Tennessee, so this will be a low possession game. A team that shoots a lot of three-pointers. I think they have 4 guys on the season that have made over 50 threes. Tennessee's got 2 of them. Now, granted, Chasselnier's hit over 100 threes. Wofford doesn't have anybody like that. But a team with a bunch of different dudes that can hit shots, a team that is going to play at a slow tempo. It's just not hard to see how an upset would happen or how this game becomes close. A Wofford team who shot well in the conference tournament is shooting well entering this, stays hot. They hit a bunch of shots from the perimeter. It's not going to be a game that the 2 teams get up and down a lot. And you just combine that, especially if Tennessee doesn't shoot very well. It's not hard to see how this could be a close game. But at the same time, Tennessee is a lot better team. I think, I imagine if I was Wofford, my strategy would be to really pack the paint and make Tennessee hit jump shots. But just from what Wofford has from a rim protection standpoint, I think Tennessee should be able to get to the rim and score at the rim a lot in this game, whether that is Jordan Gainey and Zakai Ziegler or even Chaslanier and Igor Milicic. So if Tennessee can come out and hit some shots early and loosen up Wofford's defense, I think this is a game that if they don't necessarily score a ton of points, because I think that it's going to be low tempo, low possession, I do think Tennessee should score at a pretty high efficiency. So, it's obviously it's a 15 seed. I don't think anybody that's ever gotten upset as a 2 seed thinks it's going to be a great game or thinks they're going to lose. But and that's kind of where I'm at with Tennessee. Like I think Tennessee is going to be able to win this game relatively handedly, but at the same time, I can definitely see how an upset or how this game would turn close. It's not overly difficult to see how that would happen.
Sure. And when you say low possession, when you say a little bit of a slower pace, it just continues to remind me that turnovers are going to be something that's important in this game. Turnovers is something that is absolutely a recipe for success in getting a March Madness game and potentially getting an upset or something along those lines. If you say it's a low possession game, those possessions are going to be valuable. Tennessee needs to be efficient, but I feel good about what Tennessee is going to be able to do and advance through this game and so on. But you're right. You obviously got to show up to play. You are in the win or go home phase of the season. And so obviously all of these are to stay on the court. So Tennessee has to do what they do. Tennessee's got to handle their business. I think take care of the basketball, obviously see how many turnovers that they can force and take advantage of on their end. But it's a 2-15 matchup that I don't see much of a risk of an upset happening here in this first round.
Yeah. And to, just a point on Wofford in general, they are from KenPom, they are the highest rated 15 seed. So in theory, they are the best 15 seed in the field. And, it's kind of like I said, this is a team I don't typically think of SoCon teams as 15 seeds. So they could be a little bit more dangerous, but at the same time, I think Tennessee's 18.5 point favorites. They're expected to win this game handedly. They've played Wofford last year. They won handedly, even though it was somewhat close at halftime. So we'll see what happens, but I wouldn't put Tennessee on major upset watch or anything like that.
Yeah, you will not hear me being concerned about this game for Tennessee leading up to the game. We won't know what happened, but I will not be too concerned in the lead up to it. In the second round, Tennessee is going to get either 7-seed UCLA or 10-seed Utah State. I don't know much about who's going to come out of that game, but I know that it is good for Tennessee that they're not playing a Gonzaga potentially in the second round like our friends Houston are as the 1 seed in the Midwest region. Something maybe that you can tell your friends that I learned today is that Utah State plays a little bit of a funky zone defense. Again, maybe that's just trivia for your watch party if Tennessee does end up playing Utah State on Saturday in Lexington. But that is who your second round matchup would be. I don't know, Ryan, any kind of thoughts on those? Obviously, the Sweet 16 potential, the Elite 8 potential is where things really get fascinating. But my biggest takeaway just from those two teams is, hey, at least you're not taking on Gonzaga, who is a criminally rated 8 seed, taking on Georgia in that first round up there at the top section of the Midwest.
Yeah, Gonzaga, I was looking at it today. They've lost 8 games, and obviously their schedule's not the greatest playing in that conference. But of the 8 games they've lost, all of them have been by single digits, and like most of them have been by 5 or less. And they've won 3 games by single digits all year. So all that to say, they've just been bad in close games. They're better than their record looks. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think with the Utah State UCLA, I'd probably rather see UCLA if I'm Tennessee, just from the standpoint of Utah State. They run a little bit of a funky defense. Now they've been very bad defensively. They grade out pretty terribly defensively, but they have a good offense. They have, again, kind of like I think the teams that have given Tennessee some issues. They have an offense that doesn't really just have one go-to scorer or one guy that they rely on a ton. It's very balanced, and they have a bunch of different dudes that can knock down shots. In some ways, in that sense, similar to Wofford, but just a lot more efficient, and they've been a lot better offensively this year. So I think it would be a challenge for Tennessee to guard Utah State, and then with just the funky defense. Even though I don't think it's a great defense, if you don't make shots, things could look interesting. UCLA is, built more similarly to how Tennessee is built, where they're a defensive team with Mick Cronin. They're not bad offensively, but they're not great. They also play at a very slow pace. So again, I don't think that would be a game Tennessee would blow UCLA out, but it's a low possession game. To your point earlier about turnovers, they're really good at forcing turnovers. That's really the one thing that UCLA does that you're like, yeah, they're great at that. Everything else, they're just solid. And, I think Tennessee's a better team. So if I was Tennessee, I'd rather see UCLA than Utah State. But I think the Vols are better than both teams. And I like their chances to get to the Sweet 16 this season against either one of those teams.
If Tennessee does get past the first weekend of play there in Lexington, they will head to Indianapolis, which is certainly, at least on our end, a much more favorable of a path than Cleveland and New Jersey would have been, especially after all the travel that we did last year for the tournament. But kind of looking at the Midwest as a whole, it's funny when I was doing my research just over the last couple of days, knowing that Tennessee was going to be in this region. It's a fairly polarizing region. I looked at ESPN today, and they basically called it the region of chalk. Just felt like there wasn't a lot of good potential for first round upsets there in the region. But then 247 Sports, I think, basically called it the region of the most volatility, with a lot of different things that can happen. Now, again, depending on who you talk to, depending on who you ask, it can go a million different ways. But I say all that to say that I like Tennessee's path, and that's not necessarily in comparison to other 2 seeds, other 1 seeds, whatever it is. I'm just looking at Tennessee here. I like their path, and I like what they could be able to do. And part of that reason is because you got 2 teams who could potentially be a Sweet 16 matchup that I'm not that scared of because of where Tennessee is right now. That is Kentucky and that is Illinois, right? I'll be interested to get your thoughts on both those teams, but I'm just not buying Kentucky right now. And I know that might be a little bit dangerous to say because Tennessee did go 0-2 against them in the regular season this year. But it's a Kentucky team that's a little bit depleted right now. They're banged up with injuries. Jackson Robinson first and foremost. And then Lamont Butler, I believe, is playing his way back from injury. It does seem like he's going to play, but maybe not 100%. I'm just not too scared of that. Now, obviously, anything could happen. And then Illinois is a team that Tennessee beat already in the season. Now, granted, it was, I don't know, it was early and it was a 2-point game that Tennessee won on a buzzer beater. But all this to say is that I like where Tennessee's path is headed.
It's an interesting kind of dichotomy. And just to your point as a whole, as I said a minute ago, just kind of looking at the favorability to path. Wofford is the highest rated 15 seed on KenPom. UCLA is the 3rd highest rated 7 seed. Utah State is the lowest 10 seed, and Kentucky is the lowest 3 seed. Houston is the third highest rated 1 seed. So it's a lot of teams that are lower rated compared to what line they're on. But specifically with Kentucky, I think it's an interesting spot where, one, you note the injuries, and I think the injuries make me skeptical that Kentucky's going to get past the first weekend. But it seems like Lamont Butler, if he does miss this weekend, could very well be back for the second weekend. And I see both sides to the due for a win / bad matchup. But I just say, not that Tennessee can't beat Kentucky. I mean, they were very close in 2 games this year. They certainly are capable. I think they're a better team than Kentucky, but I also think it's a real thing that Kentucky's a bad matchup for Tennessee. And I think Indianapolis would have a lot more Kentucky fans there than Tennessee fans. So that element I don't necessarily like. And then that's where you kind of go the other way, where Illinois is the 2nd highest rated 6th seed, and they're very, very close behind. I think they're like a spot behind Marquette, who is the highest rated 6th seed.
Okay.
So they're really good for a 6th seed, and I think they're better than the 6th seed. They struggled a lot in the middle of the season. I think they're like 4 seed good. They struggled in the middle of the season with some injuries, with some illnesses, and they've played well down the stretch. So that kind of goes both ways, where I think that's less likely that I think it's more likely that's in my bracket I've done. I clicked through quickly. I have Illinois beating Kentucky. I think Illinois makes it to the Sweet 16 to face Tennessee. And that's probably a good thing. I think that's a better thing than Tennessee facing Kentucky. I like Tennessee's chances against Illinois more than I like Tennessee's chances against Kentucky. But at the same time, like I don't think of them as like your usual 6th seed. I think they're better than that. I think they're, like I said a minute ago, more like a 4 seed good. So it's the NCAA tournament. It's going to be challenging games, not easy games. But there's nothing that I'm just like, oh man, that's going to be really hard for Tennessee to get by, or wow, Tennessee really got screwed with having to face that team in the first three games. And certainly when you get to the Elite Eight, you expect to see somebody really good. So all that to say, each game or potential game has its things you don't like about it, or its downfalls that aren't great. But I think overall Tennessee got a pretty good draw, and you take if you're Tennessee, you would definitely take what they got.
Yeah, I feel the same exact way. I'm not guaranteeing that Tennessee can obviously get to an Elite Eight. Nobody can, but I like the way that Tennessee's path is set up for them. And you're right. There's no landmine out there, kind of in the field that you'll have to navigate like there certainly are with others that we'll see unfold this weekend. And so you never know what could happen. Who knows? Maybe even Troy could give Kentucky a little bit of a run for their money there in the early part of the week, but we will see how everything unfolds. And then I like what Jay Billis, he kind of went through a lot of his projections. In the different projections that I've looked at from the different analysts, experts, whatever you may go with, seems like most people are taking Houston over Tennessee. Certainly that's not to say that others aren't taking Tennessee over Houston, but at least that's what I've seen the most common. Jay Billis said that if that matchup comes, then you better find 3 Navy SEALs to officiate it. I thought that was a pretty good way to put those words together.
Thank God Jay Billis wouldn't be announcing a Tennessee-Houston game. He might not talk about the game for a second. It might just be him talking about the refs and how much he dislikes the style of play for 40 minutes.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about Houston, but then real quick also that this reminded me a second ago talking about Kentucky. Just very, very quickly, somebody on the YouTube had commented and asked sort of a mailbag question, though we don't really do mailbag, but we'll take your questions when you send them in. They just want to know maybe a quick bullet point or two about if Tennessee faces Kentucky, which obviously we will break down before it happens, but just to answer their question right here in the immediacy, just a quick bullet point or two of what Tennessee might try to do differently if they do face Kentucky again down the road, and then maybe your early thoughts on Houston, as that does seem to be the big bad, if you will, that could potentially stand in Tennessee's way of getting to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the Kentucky standpoint, I think it'll be curious to see where they fall. And, they shot all the threes, however many it was in the first game. And they took much, much less, especially before the last minute or two of the game when they were down in the second matchup. So offensively, I think you probably already saw that adjustment to some degree. And I think that is probably what that would look like again, more Tennessee trying not to settle for threes against a team that likes to pack it in. Defensively, I'm not really sure what that adjustment does look like. I know there were times in the second Kentucky game that Tennessee kind of mixed up, how it was guarding ball screens more predominantly, or more prevalent, I guess would be the right word. Against Kentucky, it was how they were defending off-ball screens and some pin downs. So they adjusted some things in the course of that game, and I think you saw in the defensive stretch, and I can't remember the stats, but 10-minute stretch in the second half where Tennessee went from down 8 to up 2. Some defensive things really worked, and I think Kentucky kind of had another counter, and Tennessee had some miscommunications on stuff that cost them down the stretch. So all that is to say, I think all that to say, Tennessee tried different things in those 2 games.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was just a one thing the entirety of the 2 games. I thought they made more adjustments in the second game than we oftentimes see them make when they play a team twice in one season. So I'm not exactly sure what that would look like. And yeah, I mean, Houston, look, I've been saying, I think if I was Tennessee, I'd rather play Houston than Duke, but I mean, that's not that Houston's not a really good team. I mean, since December on, Houston has lost 1 basketball game. Their last loss was on February 1st. They've won 13 in a row since then. So this is a really good team, and they're like a typical Houston team. They're fantastic defensively. They're one of the two teams currently in KenPom that rank higher in defensive efficiency than Tennessee. They, like Tennessee, play at a very, very slow pace, but are pretty efficient offensively. They've shot it really well from three-point range this year with a number of guys that can knock down shots. LJ Cryer, who's probably their go-to scorer, like Chaz Lanier's guy that's made 100 three-pointers this season. Emmanuel Sharp's made a ton. They have a bunch of different guys that shoot a lot of threes and are pretty efficient. So that's probably what's a little bit different about this Houston team compared to teams in the past. It's just a little bit more shooting. They get a lot of their points from the three-point line. But at the same time, like if you just look at them generally analytically, they're about as good as they've been the last number of years. So a tough team to play. I think it'll be Houston or Gonzaga from the top side of the bracket. I'm not a huge believer in Purdue or Clemson, though Purdue would obviously they would have a sizable home court advantage in Indianapolis if they were to make it against Houston, and so maybe Tennessee will. We'll see the devil that's given them a lot of issues in the NCAA tournament over the last decade one more time in the Elite Eight. But I think it's probably Houston, and then Gonzaga would be the second pick.
You're not buying a run from the Georgia Bulldogs to the.
I'm not. And then look, this will probably mean that Georgia wins because this is how March Madness works. But I don't know if I've ever felt more confident about an 8-9 game than I am confident that Gonzaga will beat Georgia.
Yeah. There's a lot of areas in my bracket where I'm going to trust kind of just this SEC, this gauntlet that these teams have been on. Maybe it helps them pick up a game, but the Bulldogs are not in that category. That'll be a pretty easy and quick pick as we go through things. All right, so that's pretty much what it's going to look like over the next couple of weeks. We will see how long Tennessee stays in the race. First week in Lexington, second weekend in Indianapolis, third and final weekend if they get there, obviously if they get to the second one as well, but that will be in San Antonio. It would be fun to head to the Lone Star State for that one. By the way, the court came out for that, and it looks phenomenal. It's a true 10 out of 10.
Yeah, that court does look phenomenal. Something you might have known, I didn't know until today, the Sweet 16 in Indy is at Lucas Oil and not at Cambridge. So it will be more tickets available, but
that is thrilling. I cannot wait. I've always wanted to go to Lucas Oil. We've already been to Gainbridge. Very nice facility. It was nice to be there in downtown Indianapolis where you just walk everywhere. You literally just had to cross one crosswalk to get from our hotel front door to
the media hotel,
the media door. It was amazing. But I've always wanted to go to that. I've always wanted to go to that football stadium. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's is a football stadium would be cool to go to. Me, as just a hater of playing basketball games in football stadiums, so does not like it. Though I do think it's going to be it's not going to be like the Final Four.
Oh, the overflow seating is basically going to be over in Kansas. I mean, the overflow seating way at the top for the media people when the press row fills up, it's going to be a mile and a half away.
It's not. It won't be like the Final Four where it's like the length of the court is like the way it is on a football field, and it's like all the seats filled up. It's going to be like running opposite with like stand-in bleachers on one side. So, it'll be an interesting dynamic. And so I don't know. I'll be curious to see it. And I am with you. Lucas Oil is a place I've wanted to go before, just for a football game, not a basketball game.
I would like to go for a football game as well. Let me ask you this real quick. Let's say hypothetically, okay, Tennessee does get to San Antonio. I don't know where the game's going to be played, if it's going to be the Alamo Dome. It is the Alamo Dome.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Okay, let me ask you this. Let's say hypothetically Tennessee's there. Tennessee wins the Midwest region. They're the representative. They're maybe going to take on Duke. Does it make it better or worse for Tennessee's chances that I have already won a basketball championship in that building and I have it to my name? Does that maybe make it more likely that I'm lucky, and maybe the team that I'm surrounded by, or the team that I'm somewhat loosely affiliated with, does that give him a better chance? Or does that say that, hey, Rick's not got a lot of magic in his lifetime. He used up a lot of it back in high school with a high school basketball championship that I didn't even play for. Which way do you think that most likely leans?
Yeah, I like the mojo. I like the positive mojo. I think it's probably a good thing.
I do too.
It's like how Mike Wilson, there's been 3 regional sites at Madison Square Garden in the last like 60 years, and he's covered 3 different teams in the 3 of them. He covered
Wow.
Michigan State there, he covered South Carolina there, and he covered Tennessee there. And the year that it was Tennessee, it was like, all right, well, they're going to get the East region, and they're going to make the Sweet 16 because of the mojo of Mike always having previously covered the 2 other ones in Madison Square Garden. So that's kind of what I'd compare it to. I like the mojo.
Okay.
It doesn't actually mean anything, but I like the mojo.
Well, it might mean something. And so on that basis, maybe if people want to donate to our trip, we can get like a penthouse. I mean, hook us up, because I do think it would be beneficial for me to be there. I think maybe I might bring some good mojo. By the way, Plano West defeated Clear Lake High School back in the 2015 Texas State Basketball Championship. Yours truly was in attendance for that one.
My Berlin Bruins came up just to
you got a one-up
champion too. No, I'm not one-upping. I'm one-downing.
Oh,
but it was the same
runner-up?
year, 2015. The only time I think they've ever made it to the state championship game. They lost a real close game to. I think it was.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Then
I think it was to Hamilton. Great game though.
Okay.
Absolute battle. I think the kids from Hamilton, they had 2 twins that went to Memphis. I think.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
Well, the Alamo Dome, I am at least excited for, but I do think it kind of goes back into your frustration with Lucas Oil. As opposed to it being wherever the San Antonio Spurs play, it is going to be, I think the Alamo Dome is the football stadium. So at least for that old basketball game, not that it was anything close, but it was curtained off halfway through.
Yes, but see, I'll go the opposite way because the Final Four is always like that. The Final Four is always in a football stadium, so that's just my expectation at this point.
Yeah.
And the Alamo Dome is like the smallest football stadium is ever in. So I think it's almost a good thing that it's San Antonio for that standpoint because I think it's as small as a field as you'll get. Whereas Sweet 16 games, I mean, maybe I know when Tennessee played Michigan in 2014, it was in Lucas Oil. For the most part, I think those are usually in basketball arenas.
We got to go to the Alamo.
Yeah.
What do you think?
If Tennessee makes it, I'm down to go to the Alamo.
You're gonna love. You've already been to the Alamo.
Yes, but I'll go again.
That takes some of the wind out of the sail. But we'll still go. I imagine a lot of people will go. People got to go see the Alamo. It's pretty cool. All right. Have we at this point we're rambling with the Alamo? Have we missed anything? Talked about the SEC tournament. Talked about March Madness. Basically, what's going to happen from this point out is that we will continue having the press pass previews and recaps as Tennessee makes their way through the tournament. I'd imagine we will not be too shy about podcasting, but let us know whether you see the video on YouTube or whether you hear it on a podcasting service. Let us know if you got any kind of questions or anything specific that you want to hear about, but we will certainly have you covered from here until Tennessee is ending in the tournament run, whenever that might be, whether that is Lexington, Indianapolis, or San Antonio. We will have you covered for it all. Make sure to check out RockyTopInsider.com to get the latest news, notes, and coverage. I would also say that now is maybe the best time of the year, also start a football season, to go ahead and just subscribe to the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel. Everything we'll be posting is just tournament interviews, whether it's before a game with Rick Barnes and players, whether it is post-game. We will have you covered totally on post-game interviews. And by the judging by the SEC tournament, it seems like a lot of people are very interested in those post-game interviews. So make sure you're subscribed to Rocky Top Insider on YouTube as we go through this thing. Ryan, anything else that I maybe have missed so far?
I think we've hit all of it.
Okay. Well, he is Ryan Shumpert. You can follow him at rshump00. My name is Rick Butler. You can follow me at Ricks_Butler on Twitter. But otherwise, stay tuned as, we are very excited to see where this run goes in another March Madness tournament around the country. Very, very excited for it all and very excited to bring you the coverage of that. Stay tuned. Do not, no need to go. I don't know what I'm trying to say. We're at 40 minutes. Hey, it's March Madness time. Let's have a good time. Enjoy the day out there. We'll see you back to the next one. Yeah, get out of here.